They thought I'd roll over when they cut my water, not just to my land, but to every stubborn inch of history, my family's sweat, ever soaked into this soil. Drought management, that's what they called it. Meanwhile, those neat little ridge lawns stayed green, my orchard shriveled, dying by the hour like none of it ever mattered. No warning, no hearing, just that awful hush in the dirt. But see what they didn't know: I built those pipelines. I drafted the plans they tried to hijack, and I had every document to prove it. They'd mock me in the HOA forum, then try to buy me off in private, like erasing my rights could be done with a single doctored map. So I made a call to Sacramento. And when the state came knocking, it wasn't just for me. Permit approved just like that. It was for every neighbor they tried to silence, every orchard they tried to starve, every lie they paved over with policy. This wasn't a story about money, it was about power, about standing your ground until the machine that's drowning you is the one that cracks. Because the day they cut my orchard off, I opened the floodgates. It was just past dawn. I stepped out on the porch, coffee and hand steam rising like some quiet plea. The mug was warm, one of the last comforts I had left. Sky bleeding a pale orange over the hills, and for a second I just stood there grateful I'd stayed in West Vale after Michelle was gone. The almond grove was whispering behind the house, rows and rows, green and gold, the hum of irrigation, usually singing a kind of lullaby. But that morning there was nothing. Silence pressing down heavy, unnatural. I crunched out across the flagstones, boots on gravel, everything too loud in that dead air. My first thought breaker tripped, maybe controller's gone dark, like after that old lightning storm. But the weather had been bone dry for weeks. Main valve on, I yanked a length of drip line, gave it a squeeze. Nothing. Cold knot in my gut. Checked the pressure gauge, 0. Not low, not sluggish, just dead. I cracked open a sprayer with my hand. Dry. Soil under my boots already splitting cracks, drinking in the rising heat. I felt sick. Back inside, screen door slapping, I fired up the laptop. HOA portal. Nothing. No alerts, no emails. The forum usually hopping with drama about fences and barking dogs silent. Then my phone buzzes, reminder: new community water conservation measures take effect today. Check your email for details. West Vale HOA Board. Subject line: Urgent Summer Water Plan Activation. The message was cold, surgical, effective immediately due to ongoing drought. All non-residential and agricultural water usage is suspended until further notice. Exceptions for decorative landscaping and community recreation per section. 6.2. That word agricultural suspended. No warning, no vote, no hearing. I read it again like the words might rearrange themselves into something less ridiculous. But my land had water rights grandfathered in before the HOA was even a thought. Legal, notarized, double-checked the day Michelle and I bought this place. Because of these trees. My father's trees. My daughter's inheritance. Check the controller again, no signal. Check the district meter at the street padlocked. Someone had shut me off by hand. This wasn't a glitch. This was an act of war. 2 hours later, I drove to the HOA office. Anger in my throat. Their little building sits beside the pond, refilled for aesthetic enhancements the week before, sparkling under lily pads while my trees wilted. I parked next to a fancy new truck and walked in. Receptionist young, probably 25, Samantha on her tag. Morning, I said, Navarro Parcel 11C. My water was cut off without notice. I need a board member. She smiled like she was reading a script. Are you referring to today's conservation notice, Mr. Navarro? I told her no. I'm referring to someone manually closing my main valve. This parcel is grandfathered agricultural independent rights. She froze. I can pass a message to Miss Delaney. Of course, Karen Delaney. HOA president for 2 years, realtor turned queen. Always for her friends, always against the rest. I told Samantha I want a written explanation and legal justification by end of day, or I file with the county. And I left. Driving home, I passed Juniper Ridge new mansions, lush sod sprinklers dancing. They had water. I had none. I pulled over, white-knuckled. I'd been here before working for the state water board, sitting in drought meetings watching officials bank on ignorance. But they didn't know who I'd been before. I was just the guy with almonds. Back home, I went to the garage, pulled down the heavy old box marked Water District Legacy Docs. The top folder, Navarro Parcel Water Rights. County seal still pressed into the paper. Game on. That afternoon, the HOA called an emergency board session 3:30 p.m. when nobody with a job could show. Classic move. I showed up early with my binder sat in the front row. Room smelled like bleach and burned coffee. A few retirees, a young couple, nobody from the Ridge. The ones who'd benefit never showed. Karen swept in, late sunglasses on her head, indoors. The board followed, faces down. She took the podium, tapped her notes. Due to rapidly worsening drought conditions, all non-essential water use suspended. Her gaze found me agricultural uses that do not directly contribute to community aesthetics. A guy in the back. What in God's name does that even mean? Karen ignored him. Then she spelled it out. HOA will temporarily suspend water access to parcels zoned agricultural under Phase 1, specifically 11A through 11D, to preserve residential landscaping and property values. She was calm practiced, like she'd rehearsed it in a mirror. I stood. Miss Delaney, the county hasn't issued new restrictions. Agricultural use is prioritized over ornamental landscaping. On what authority are you overriding state-recognized water rights? Her smile didn't falter. We're following advisory guidance from the Drought Council in alignment with subdivision standards. That's advisory, I said. No jurisdiction over private grandfathered parcels. HOA retains authority to manage resources, enforce community standards. She quoted the fine print. Most folks skip the clause about mandatory participation in environmental initiatives. But she'd missed one detail. I lifted the binder, held up a zoning plat from 1981 stamped by the county. This map predates the HOA. Parcel 11C is agricultural exempt with independent water access. I showed the 1993 deed addendum. The room stirred. We appreciate your historical records, Karen snapped, but the board's decision stands. So you're denying a legal right without due process. This isn't a courtroom. No, I said quietly, but it will be. The whispers started. Meeting adjourned. As she passed, she hissed, "Be careful what you wish for." I sat there a long time. She thought I'd back down to avoid the hassle. She had no idea what was at stake. These trees weren't just income. They were my last link to my father. He'd built that pump house, carried water in buckets, carved our name into the doorframe. After Michelle died, I'd raised Leah beneath these branches. Some nights I walked those rows in the dark, whispering into the leaves, keeping something alive when everything else was lost. And Karen Delaney wanted to murder that legacy for perfect lawns and the illusion of order. I stopped at the Cotton's place. Greg and Marcia, ex-military, kept Bee's little citrus grove. They shut ours off last week, Marcia said. System error, never came back on. Greg, if they're coming for you, something's rotten. It's worse than rotten, I said. It's illegal. That night, I called every old-timer in Phase 1. We agreed to meet, just us, in my garage. The four of us gathered the almond grove behind us, brittle and brown. We weren't just angry anymore, we were witnesses. And witnesses armed with evidence are a dangerous thing. Next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the county. Sent copies to the Water Board, the Office of Environmental Equity. Every envelope felt like a grenade tossed over the HOA's walls. Then I called Ray, my old boss at the state. You caught in the crossfire. They're starving agricultural parcels for new lawns. You got evidence, maps, permits, witnesses. 4 of us. I'll flag the logs, Ray said. If there's a problem, it'll show up. That afternoon, Greg's nephew, Min, law student, came by, translated our complaints, mapped out a joint action plan. Marcia started documenting every wilted branch. Greg kept a log of every failed irrigation test. Mr. Lee found a memo from 2018 acknowledging our exemption. I walked every easement, camera in hand, mapped every dry valve. We weren't just defending our parcels anymore. We were building a record no one could erase. Retaliation came fast. Anonymous threats. Sell the grove. Move on. Then the official citations: visible vegetative decay, non-compliance, hostile community environment. Consensus, they called it. Consensus bought with silence. But the more they pushed, the more people talked. Word spread at church, at the market, in carpool lines. Photos of ridge fountains, our cracked soil, the lush new pond. Residents started reaching out. A teacher dropped off old meeting minutes. A father admitted he'd only noticed when his own water shut off. Our meetings grew. Men brought a whiteboard. We charted timelines, violations. We built a digital folder, truth. And records are what bureaucrats fear most. At the next HOA meeting, it was standing room only. Greg and Marcia at my side, Mr. Lee behind Min with his legal notes. Karen showed up with 2 lawyers. I spoke for 30 households. We have water rights. Here's the evidence. But we do not have water. The lawyer tried to cut me off. I stood firm. Your charter doesn't override state law. Karen, please lower your tone. No, you've spoken in closed sessions long enough. Tonight you'll listen. The room was silent. Then someone clapped, then a dozen. Karen's gavel rattled, but the noise wouldn't stop. Then came county code enforcement, old tool shed violation, beehive fines, height violations, whatever they could throw. But now everyone was watching. Someone leaked photos of Karen's pool, full sparkling exempt. The state opened an investigation. Site visit scheduled. That evening I walked the grove. Not all the trees would survive. Roots only endure so long. But something unbreakable was moving in the ground. And this time it was moving our way. I hadn't been to the county archives in a decade. Pulled up the old plat maps. Sure enough, the original feed from the Water District Independent. But then in the 2023 filings, buried on page 17, a quiet revision integration of ag feeds into the HOA grid, signed by Karen. They'd just redrawn the map. I downloaded it all, old and new. You found the smoking gun, Greg said. No, I told him. I found the arson kit. We uploaded everything to Min's folder, sent it to Ray in the state. Ray called that's fraud. This is Big Derek. They filed a zoning amendment without review, enough to force action. The inspector's coming. That afternoon I flagged every meter, every emitter. Documented the battlefield because that's what the grove had become. Leah drew the trees, leaves, curled branches sagging. Do you think the trees are mad at us? No, kiddo. They're just tired. Then the ridge finally got hit. One day their sprinklers died, sod crisped. Panic set in. The illusion cracked. Ridge folks showed up confused, wanting answers. I told them the truth. The wall between old and new West Vale started to crumble. State inspectors arrived measuring sampling drones over both groves. They found a hidden override script diverting water to ridge lawns during peak hours. It was deliberate. The evidence was overwhelming. The news broke. HOA accused of illegal water diversion, footage of my dying trees beside ridge lawns. Statewide outrage. Next HOA meeting chaos. Karen's signature on the forgery, her lawyers silent. This isn't a circus, she said. No, it's a crime scene, I replied, and the state was watching. Charges came. The board lawyered up. The Ridge development froze permits, suspended audits launched. The news was everywhere. The state issued a directive, water rights reinstated overrides, disabled ongoing monitoring ordered. Karen and board members banned from HOA leadership, possible criminal referral. The HOA website crashed under traffic. Karen vanished. But her resignation landed heavy paper, self-congratulatory, never once mentioning water. Treasurer followed, admitting, "I should have spoken up sooner." The community board became a living thing, special elections audits, glass door propped open. Someone taped up a sign, "Transparency starts here." Truth poured out old fine solar panels, rejected native gardens, destroyed threats for tiny infractions. We archived it all. Then the money trail surfaced. Karen and her allies had financial stakes in the Ridge. Every gallon rerouted was profit. Lawsuits followed: utility tampering, breach of duty, emotional distress. The state charged Karen quietly, but it made the front page. The valley exhaled. Life in the grove turned the other way, toward healing. Some trees lost, but we replanted hope, justice, memory. The neighborhood changed. The park hosted gatherings under the oak, decisions made by those who showed up. School kids pressed their hands to the trunks, asking about the year the trees nearly died. Our story became a playbook for others. Men passed the bar now, helping other neighborhoods. Even some Ridge families stayed, no more chasing perfect lawns. Karen's name faded. Restitution was ordered. She moved away. That first harvest after the drought was different. Fewer trees, but more hands helping. We pressed cider, roasted almonds, told stories under string lights. Leah stood on a hay bale, read from her paper, "Trees remember drought, but they also remember water and teach us how to come back greener." She got a standing ovation. Later, as the moon rose over the orchard, I realized we hadn't just saved trees. We'd saved each other. Fear had ruled, then crumbled. The land had taught us legacy isn't about owning, but about keeping something alive for the next hands to hold. So when the sun comes up and I walk these rows with Leah, coffee in my hand, sketches on the fence fluttering, I don't listen for threats anymore. I listen for what endures: water running, laughter, the orchard in bloom. And I know down to the roots nobody's turning off our tap again. Not here. Now let me ask you, where do you draw the line between law and justice, between order and what's right? Drop your take below. Ever tangled with HOA power or seen someone fight back for what matters? Tell me. Let's keep the story and the conversation alive.